So it is 6 o'clock on July 10th, 2023, and now call this meeting of the Chelmsford Select Board to order. Would you please join me for the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. First point right now is Erin Drew is not present today for our meeting. She may be here later on. We'll see. Second is I'm going to call a joint meeting of the Planning Board and Select Board to order, and for the purposes of accepting nominations for the Associate Planning Board position. If we have nominations, we're open to take them.
I'll nominate Joel Luna and Fran Jeschler as candidates.
Do we have seconds?
I'll second.
Both, George? Yep. Are there any other nominations?
I'll make a motion to close nominations.
I'll second.
George? Virginia? Pat? Yes. John?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Chris? Thank you. 7-0. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry, Anita.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I forgot you were there. Okay, so 7-0, so nominations are closed. So I'd like to just go around and take a vote for either one of the candidates rather than going around twice. I'd like to just do it once.
Could I just speak first?
Yes, of course.
Did we nominate her?
Hi, my name's Doreen Deschler, and I'm one of the nominees. I just want to say that I got over 2,400 votes last election for the planning board. I came within 250 votes of being put on the planning board. I lost by 250. I think that the citizens of Chelmsford have shown that they have their confidence in me, so I just want you to take that under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak, or, okay. So we'll go around the room. Why don't we start out with the planning board? Deirdre?
I'm going to vote for Joel.
Okay. John?
I vote for Joel.
Okay. Mike?
I vote for Joel.
Chris?
I vote for Joel.
George?
You got Anita on.
Oh, Anita, I'm sorry. I keep forgetting you. You're so little.
I'll vote for Joel.
Okay. George?
Joel.
Okay. Virginia?
Joel?
Pat?
Joel?
And I'm for Joel. So I would say it's unanimous, and I think we have a new Associate Planning Board member. So I'd like to have a motion to adjourn the
So-
joint meeting.
So moved.
I'll second.
George?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
Pat? I'm aye. Deirdre? John? Mike? Chris? And Anita? Okay, it's unanimous. We are adjourned. Congratulations, Joel.
Thank you.
Okay, next piece, public service announcements.
Okay, we just have one public service announcement this evening that has to do with the fall 2023 annual town meeting. The town of Chelmsford will convene the 2023 fall town meeting on Monday, October 16, 2023. Articles to be included on the warrant must be submitted to the office of the town manager at 50 Billerica Road prior to 4 p.m. on Monday, August 7th, 2023. Petitioned articles must carry the signatures of at least 10 voters. For more information, you can contact the town manager's office at 978-250-5202.
Okay, next up is public input.
Brian Latina, Precinct 9 Town Meeting Rep, 15 Jesse Road. A late letter came today. I don't know if you all have a copy of it.
Don't know.
Thank you.
This is actually an agenda item, but I felt it's important to speak during public input as well. As you know, there's been challenges in different towns on both your valuable time and on speaking, public speaking. The points that you've made on your policy, and it'd probably be discussed tonight, maybe in another meeting, are around the ability of the public to come and speak at this microphone at this point in your meeting. And it affects all of your committee meetings as well. I've actually gone to several other committee meetings in other towns, the town of Concord, at the Concord-Carlisle School Committee. They have a 3-minute limit. You have to write a letter. You have to submit it to the people in the room. And I watched for their 15 minutes of speaking time at one point, and out of the 15 members, there were 3 that were listening to the speaker. The others were on their computers or on their cell phones. They limited the speech to 3 minutes. The Constitution does not. This is our chance to speak to you as citizens of the town and remind you that the town of Chelmsford is citizens. It's me and the rest of the people that live in our town. You work for them. Then the town manager works for you, and he has a lot of employees out there. One of the comments on your procedure is to come to the town, ideally, come to the town manager and speak through him to you in case that, make it easier for you to answer the questions and limit the time. I'm probably already over my 15 minutes or 3 minutes or 10 minutes. We used to talk as much as we wanted to, dog bites and such things. We're coming to a point in our community and in our country where we're starting to censor people. There's a bunch of discussion going on in the news right now about what happened during COVID. And I still remember back to 9/11, just after that, somebody told me, oh, everything's changed since 9/11, when I had to give 5 different kinds of information for my 16-year-old to get a driver's license. We've got to be very careful not to censor, or in the case I'm concerned about with this meeting, to limit speech to people that aren't used to standing in front of this microphone. I would rather have this talk about how to encourage someone to come stand here. Not necessarily filter through. Town manager handles everything. But at the point where you want to speak to you folks who are supposed to be the select board, that's a point where nobody should be afraid to come up here and talk. Nobody should be worried about their 3 minutes. Nobody should be worried about what they might say or do at the microphone if they've never done it before. So if you're going to put this policy into place, please limit how you challenge anybody at the mic. Please help them, educate them, teach them. If you wouldn't mind doing that, this might work. I was horrified when town meeting limited the speech to 5 minutes and then to 3 minutes. Same problem there. That is not part of the Constitution. That is not what our open public discourse should be. Your time's very limited. I appreciate it. But this particular document actually limits what we can say at the microphone, how long we can say it. And I think it probably limits free speech, which is a constitutional right that I hold very, very close and dear. And as a final point, and I've run over my 3 minutes, back on October 5th of 2020, during a meeting that I was on virtually to the select board, I was horrified that one of the other town meeting reps, so-called, spoke after I spoke. And I was limited to what I could say. It was about a project being built just down the street from me. And to find out later, and he had extended speech, he talked 10 minutes, I was allowed 3 minutes, and I was stopped when I talked about traffic because it was about a flammables issue. I found out later that it was the town manager's secretary's husband that was speaking. He didn't identify himself. I just identified myself as Brian Latina, 15 Jesse Road, and town meeting rep. That extra little piece would have allowed me to get back up and talk because I was limited, and this man had expertise on the letter that was given to the select board a little bit in advance, but not enough time to go to the public.
Okay,
And
I
if
think
you'd
we-
like to look at that video, with that in mind, please.
I appreciate it. I think we have
Thank you.
the sense of what you're saying. Is there anybody else that would care to speak during public input? Okay. Moving on. Committee vacancies.
Okay, as of today, we have the following committee vacancies. There's one vacancy on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, one vacancy on the Board of Assessors, 3 vacancies on the Commission on Disabilities, 1 vacancy on the Community Action Program Committee, 2 vacancies on the Council on Aging Board, 3 vacancies on the Cultural Council, 1 vacancy on the Holiday Decorating Committee. The Parade Committee welcomes all applicants. There's 2 vacancies on the Recycling Committee, 2 vacancies on the Roberts Field Advisory Committee, and 1 vacancy on the Tree Committee. If you're interested in serving on any of these boards or committees, you can complete an application online at the town website or through the town manager's office.
Thank you, Pat. Next up is proposed public comment policy and proposed revision to the Select Board's public input segment or regular meetings policy section. So I think in the package, we have an update from the last one we had last meeting. Is that something you want to go through, Paul, or?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, I think it would probably make some sense to address the comments that we just received in the public comment policy. Just to point out that.
Could you just clarify, which one are we looking at first?
I'm actually not looking at either
Okay.
one in particular just yet. I wanted to address the impetus for this policy, for both of these policies, which was the SJC decision in Barron v. Calenda. And in that decision, the SJC stated that a board may impose reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions, which could include designated when and where a public comment session may occur, how long it might last, the time limits for each person speaking during the public comment session, and rules preventing speakers from disrupting others and removing those who do. So the board does have the right to limit speakers to certain topics and the length of time in which they may speak. It's part of the process of conducting an orderly meeting. And I think in the public input segment at the last meeting, with regard to the policy for the public input section, I think that the board had very important feedback, which was to get rid of the specific time limitations and leave it to the discretion of the chair, to allow on certain issues where, it may need additional time, you would have the discretion to allow that. And in certain instances where a lengthy amount of public comment is not necessary, you would have the discretion to limit that as well. So I do think that you're going in the right direction with this. You are proceeding in a manner that is consistent with the state constitution as set forth and expressed in the Barron v. Calenda decision. So if we want to start with 1-2.8, public input segment of regular meetings, and I redid this section, kept as tracked changes, the changes that town manager had included previously, and did strike through on things that were being changed from that. So if we want to go through one by one, the first change, the Select Board recognizes the importance of active public participation at all public meetings at the discretion of the chair on items on the official agenda such as public hearings or other published topics where public input is explicitly identified for a given agenda item. The change to public input instead of comment in the next sentence is retained. The maximum 30-minute provision has been stricken as discussed at the last meeting. The provision for no longer than 5 minutes, and then at the chair's discretion, the 30-minute period may be extended, has also been stricken. The Select Board must ensure that so this is added to specifically include reference to the Barron v. Calenda decision. The Select Board must ensure that public comment is not restricted in a manner which would violate the decision of the Supreme Judicial Court in Barron v. Calenda, 491 Mass. 408, 2023. In the Barron case, the SJC held that reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions may be placed on public comment, but that such restrictions must be narrowly tailored to serve a significant governmental interest, and that they leave open ample alternative channels for communication of the information. The SJC further held that a policy requiring public comments to be respectful and courteous violated Article 19 of the Massachusetts Constitution. The Select Board must ensure that any limitations placed on public comment are content neutral. The first sentence of the next paragraph is stricken, and then there's also change from public input, from public comment to public input in the next paragraph. And then finally, the last paragraph has been added. All comments from the public must be directed to or through the chair once the speaker is recognized. Once recognized by the chair, all persons addressing the Select Board shall state their name and address prior to speaking. To avoid open meeting law violations, any matter presented under public input will not be debated or acted upon by the Select Board at the time it is presented. Such matters may be acted upon by the Select Board later in said public meeting if properly included on the meeting agenda, or at a subsequent public meeting if included on that meeting agenda. So I did look at trying to combine the public input segment with the public comment policy, but it was just a bit unwieldy to try to do that because this section serves a specific purpose, addressing only the public input. So instead, I just revised the draft public comment policy as well, and presumably that will be something adopted by the Select Board separately. So any questions on the public input?
I thought there were some other things that, in the second paragraph, there was another sentence that should have been deleted. The chair may limit the number of speakers due to time constraints and may increase or decrease the time allocated per speaker. Because it was kind of similar to what was in the first paragraph,
That we were going to delete that, Pat?
correct?
Certainly can delete that. I mean, it's not necessary, leaving everything at the chair's discretion.
I'm okay with that amendment.
And I'm still not comfortable with a lot of what's been added in the first paragraph. I don't know, I just don't feel that we should be saying in our policies, obey the law. So that's all I have to say about that.
But that is the purpose for setting this forth, right, is to make
Well-
sure that the board, and not just the board as currently constituted, but moving forward, it's really a way to create awareness of what is required.
Then are we going to do this every time there's a new law or a new decision that might affect something in our policies? That's what I'm reluctant to do. I mean, that's why, if you look at our policies, it specifically says about our agenda that they're posted. It doesn't say when they're posted. It doesn't say they're posted 48 hours per open meeting law, because what if that changes? I just don't see the need for it, quite frankly. We shouldn't have a need for it, let's put it that way.
To me, public policy is about our interpretation of the law based on the recent case that was dismissed or that was heard, or any other interpretation that the town feels is prudent in order to comply with the law. So we could do anything we wanted in policy. That's what policy's for. So
We can, but
I don't personally have an issue with that, but I understand what Pat's saying. Because the law doesn't change.
Sure.
Open meeting law didn't
So-
change, it's the same law.
So that-
It's our interpretation that we are now going to take as our practices, and that's what we're putting forward in policy.
but this isn't our interpretation, this is the SJC's interpretation.
Well, it's ours because it's going in our policy manual.
Well, that's why I don't think it should go in our policies.
So that was not in the original draft that was added, at the instruction of the Select Board. So-
The initial reason that we did this was to put a general public comment policy in place that could also be flowed out to all the boards, committees, and commissions to ensure that we don't get ourselves into trouble given the new SJC ruling.
Mhm.
And if we keep 1-2.8, I am still in favor of adding a general public comment policy because we often take public comment that is not part of public input. We'll take public comment for a public hearing. We will take, sometimes we have had agenda items where we've said for this particular agenda item, it's not a hearing, but we're going to take public input as part of the agenda. So I still feel that that general public comment policy is important for this board to adapt. And if that were adapted, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to taking out the same language that's the redundant language if, you know, that's Pat having an issue with, but I'm also not opposed to leaving it in. I don't think it hurts anything, and it only clarifies. Because we have had cases in this, on this board and in, you know, other public bodies where people get shut down because of the tone of what they're saying, and we can't do that anymore. And I think that the reason we started down this path was this was such a significant ruling that it was important to kind of hit ourselves over the head with a 2x4 and make sure that it was documented so we don't misstep. And I went back when I had suggested, without the context of the policy table of contents, of maybe combining these into 1-2.8.1 and 2, Paul said that 1-2 was the flow of the meeting, but it's really, I don't know that it's really the exact flow of the meeting. It's the select board's role is what 1-2 is called. So if we left 1-2.8 as the public input segment of regular meetings, I think it's very easy to add. The last section is 1-2-10 right now. It's called voting on recommendations of articles. I think it's very easy to just add a 1-2-11 that says general public comment policy and adopt both of these in some form. But I do feel it's important to have both adopted by the select board. I think it's more important to have the general public comment policy adopted if we're only going to pick one. But if we still want this public input segment one, then I think we need to adopt both. That's my view.
I agree. I think it's important, the more we hear what the people want to discuss, and the better we can, if we have to put it on another agenda, we can do that.
I will say, I do think that the recitation to Baron v. Calenda in both is repetitive, so you can remove it
So
from
if we were-
public input.
If we were to adopt the general
Speak
public
comment.
comment policy, you would be comfortable if we deleted it out of the public input segment of the
Right.
meeting? Because it's covered.
Yeah, because, public input is still public comment, as we discussed at the last meeting.
Yeah, in this case, public input is just an agenda item.
Right.
Correct.
On the select board's agenda. Public comment, as Virginia said, is across the board wherever it is required in hearings or in other areas where it's on the agenda.
Right, it's definitely
And that-
much more important that it be in
Yes.
that document rather than this
I
document.
agree.
Well, and again, that's required by law. You know, public hearing, you have to allow public input.
Right.
And it has to follow basically the same criteria. You know, you can't say it has to be orderly and polite.
When we
No, but that's what the policy is that we want to put in place based on this recent decision, so that people conduct themselves in a consistent manner in any public comment
Yeah.
forum.
And I'll say again, public comment extends beyond public
Right.
hearing.
Yes.
We have public comment that's not a public hearing, for which there is no law.
Yep. We do.
So what do we want to do?
So how do you want to proceed? Maybe,
If we don't want to mess around with the table, you know, the order of things that are there right now, I think the public comment general policy, if the board were to adapt it, could easily fit under 1-2 as a new section at the end. And then if we still want the public input segment policy, I would be okay as long as we have the public comment policy with the 2 amendments that Pat has suggested, which is to remove the redundant SJC language and to remove that statement that says the chair may limit the number of speakers. To amend it that way.
I'm fine with that.
And I just want to clarify, too, there was, in this letter that was passed out that I hadn't seen before the meeting during public input, there's also a comment about when people provide written input, it should be in the minutes and part of the public record, but we do that anyway as a matter of course.
Right.
That's, I mean, that's, if anywhere, I think that should be in the minutes law, not the
Right.
the minutes policy, but
I think it is.
I think, yeah, I just,
Yeah, that's
it's the
redundant.
law that we're
Yeah.
supposed to be, to Pat's point.
Right, but it's good to put the important parts of the law into policy so that people that are doing these jobs as volunteer, elected or appointed
Right.
officials can follow it easily and
Right.
be able to comply. So I'm fine with those.
I agree.
Anybody have any thoughts?
I have a question that's not related to this, but it's a question of counsel. In both the documents, it talks about speakers that providing their address. And I know that there are some people, for legal protections, their address is not to be disclosed, either because they're perhaps public safety officials, or there are people who are protected for whatever reasons. You know, we probably have all seen the commercials with the Secretary of State about protecting endangered peoples from disclosing their address and so forth. So I guess, should there be some disclaimer or some parenthetical language or something in there that, I just don't want it to be an issue where somebody unknowingly sort of rigidly gets to the rules and requires the speaker to provide their address when there may be legal reasons that they may not wish to provide their address or to disclose their address. Maybe I'm overthinking this, but that occurred to me when I read these.
Just one second, Paul. I just wanted to make a record that Erin Drew has joined us at the table. Go ahead.
I mean, I think that's a good point. I also don't think, that chairs apply that rigidly.
Okay.
Certainly, I've spoken in many meetings, and I give my office address rather than home address.
Right, and I think a
I was
lot
more
of-
thinking of
yeah.
like a
Right, I
police
understand what
officer
you're
or a,
saying.
you know,
And
somebody who's
they
under
could
protective
simply
order.
give, the
Okay.
police
Okay.
department address
Okay.
if pushed, but
Yeah, they've done that before.
Okay, all right, I just didn't want somebody to read it literally. That was my concern.
But that being said, I don't think it's a bad idea, again, to put something in there that, acknowledges, because at the end of the day, I think having the person's name is sufficient for the public record. If they're unwilling to provide their address, I don't think that the chair can require it. So I'll look at adding something.
Okay, again, just a minor thing.
That's a good comment.
Thank you.
Anything else?
How are you gonna know if they're a member of the town necessarily? Just somebody comes up here and they wanna start talking, and they just say, they give a phony name and no address. I mean,
Yeah, we don't check them, so somebody could give a phony name, but we don't limit it just to Chelmsford residents and.
Well, and we've had situations where, like, for example, when we've had public input around, there was like a specific topic for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, and some people were afraid to provide their real name,
Right.
and I don't think we required it.
Right.
Right, so again, I can look at providing something that allows for that potential.
Thank you.
Is that in both policies or just our public input?
It was in both.
It's in both?
It's,
Yes, it is. Should be in the public comment.
It's
most
in the first
important one, 'cause
paragraph of
That's the
the-
one that carries in all of them.
comment, and it's in the
So
last paragraph of the public input.
So I don't know, Paul, since this is going to go on for another iteration, if you want to, there are boards and committees that have this on their agenda already because of the first communication that was sent out or who have adopted it. So I don't know if you want to send a communication that just says we need like one more iteration, if they want to hold off, if they haven't adopted it already.
Okay, we could.
I mean, there's probably no harm if they have already, but.
Yeah.
Any more comment on this?
No.
Okay, so we'll look forward to another iteration of this, and we'll go through that.
Attorney Haverty, do you have this letter that was passed out?
I do,
Okay.
yes.
Perfect. Okay. Why don't we move? Boards and committee onboarding? Do we,
Yeah, so in the packet, I just provided some notes to the document we reviewed last time, because when we reviewed this at the last meeting, the board said they wanted to just spend a little time with it and then have another discussion on whether to adopt this as,
they're kind of tied together.
procedures. And so the three changes on page 2, there was a suggestion made, I think by you, Mark, to include the open meeting and minutes policies from the select board policies and procedures in the town clerk's packet. And Paul, you were going to close with the town clerk's office on that.
Yes, yeah.
And then the second comment on page 2 would be, once we have the general public comment policy approved, that would be also be included in the clerk's packet when they send that out. And then just on page 3, I put in the comment, I think Pat made the suggestion just to clarify that if they want to present at a select board meeting, there's multiple ways they can request through either the liaison, the chair, or the town manager to coordinate. So the reason I asked to have this back on the agenda was if there's a formal decision that the board needs to make or not about whether to adopt these procedures, and then where would they go? Are they a new section in the policy document?
I mean, I
Or is it
really,
just that we adopt the procedures?
I think it's a procedure, yeah. I mean, we have other procedures.
Do we have a procedure document?
We have other procedures,
Okay.
so we probably
Where
have a
does it-
procedure.
where does it
Yeah,
live?
do we have a compendium of
I'm
procedures?
sure we do, I'm
Where
sure
do
Christina
they
has.
live?
I don't
I
know.
think they live in the policy document.
No, no, they don't.
They don't?
They do
Like what
not.
procedures, Pat?
We have procedures for inspections for restaurants, we have procedures for, what else we have procedures for, Paul, do you know?
Are those select
More
board
internal
procedures?
procedures like?
That's a select board procedure?
It's not really, I mean, it's a procedure that the police follow when
Oh,
they.
a town procedure?
Yeah,
right.
I see
internal.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's where I would see this going, because it definitely affects more than just this board.
He's
But
thinking
it's
over there.
adopted by the select board. So
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we have a compendium of all the select board procedures. I'll work with Christina when she comes back.
Whether
yeah.
where it resides?
So that we have it, and then maybe we document it or something, so that it doesn't, like you said, doesn't get lost. So that we can have policies and we can have procedures, but at least they're recorded in.
Right,
in
because
the
like
system.
like a couple of years ago, we reviewed all the select board policies. I would imagine we'd want to be doing that periodically with the
The
procedures
procedures,
too.
Mhm.
Okay.
So do we want to at least vote to adopt this as a procedure tonight? And where
Well, you're
it's
gonna
housed is
modify it
TBD.
slightly
Yeah,
with what you're coming out with next time, right? Because you're gonna have maybe another section for the comment policy, so will
no,
it
the
change
comment
slightly?
policy is, if you look on page 2.
Yep, I'm looking right at it.
The note in italics,
Mhm.
that's where, so the comment policy would be added to the list of material that are distributed by the town clerk's office. So when a new person is
But regardless,
appointed, they'll get it.
If it's just a section, it'll be the section.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever the
Okay.
policy is.
I'm fine if we wanna do that now, or if we
And
wanna wait till next
we'll
time.
put where procedures reside on a future agenda.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I'll look into that with Christina.
So I'll make a motion to accept the onboarding procedures as presented with noted changes as they come.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. 5-0. Okay. Utility double polls. I don't think we have any representation here, is that right?
No, I did reach out to National Grid, Curtis Davis, since the last meeting. As you recall, he was on the last meeting, and he provided this updated list of double polls that I provided to you. And I told him that I expected that the board would schedule a public hearing for 2 weeks from tonight regarding double polls. He informed me that he would not be available that evening, but he did work that Susan Griffin, who's his superior at National Grid, who many of us are familiar with, she will be virtually, remotely in 2 weeks if the board schedules that public hearing, which is what I anticipated was the outcome of the discussion from last meeting.
So that makes sense to me, so
Yeah,
should
but
we
this, to me, this list does not look near complete.
No.
This is the list of National Grid. This is 62 double polls. I don't know.
I believe you, but it lists like 2 on Barica Road. I know there's at least,
Right.
there's at least 10 between here
I
and the
sent him a
center.
picture of the one that I'm aware.
I don't know how else to get going on this unless you want us to physically inventory every poll in town.
But
Well,
no, I feel like the list that they provided us 2 weeks ago was like
more.
2.5 pages
Was
long.
longer.
It was
Yeah.
longer.
In smaller
No, that is
font.
longer,
Yeah.
yeah.
This is the list, I'm telling you, this is the list that National Grid provided to me.
This was last
Somebody else
week's.
responsible
Right.
for some of them, Paul? You know,
but this should be all the double polls.
Right,
Even if
exactly.
somebody else is responsible for doing
Exactly.
something.
Yep, exactly.
I guess we'd have to ask Susan when she's here. How are we
Well, that's what I
going
was
to account
thinking,
for all the
yeah.
missing ones? Because we
Right.
know there's missing ones.
Right. But they may not. Obviously, it's not in their system.
Well, I know, but if
Right.
their system is failing to
Right.
register the missing ones,
Right.
then they ought to come out and do an
Right,
inventory.
but how do we conduct a public hearing on a poll, the double poll, if we don't have the
Yeah, that's
listing of the
right.
double poll?
Yeah.
But could we put that as a discussion topic with her while she's here?
Yes, yes, yes.
Like include it in addition to the hearing?
And it would also be nice if they sorted it, so that it's sorted by who has responsibility by groups, so that we know,
I mean, I kind of like it
We
like,
can, we can do that, but this was sorted by set date. That's
Right.
what this was.
Yeah,
We
that's
can
fine.
sort it by street, we
no,
can
no,
sort
no.
it by next to
You
go.
can do that. I just would like to see a second sorting
Yep,
by who's responsible.
next to go, okay. Sort by next.
yeah, and then some
Keep
of
it-
them, I mean, don't make sense. Like it shows 3 at 22 Westford Street at Worthing Street. Are the 3 double poles there? I mean, it just.
Yes, it's 3 polls, because you see one is identified as poll number 10, one is 10-3, and one is 13. So that's 3 different polls.
They're right in front of 22 Westford Street
Mhm.
at the same address.
And you can see that the latitude is slightly different, the coordinates are slightly different on each of those as well.
So for the sake of maybe having a meeting that might have some outcomes,
Yep.
can you make sure that you talk to her in the interim? You know, that the first question we really have is whether this is not valid, but if it's a complete list.
We could have the hearing at least on this list and then have the
Right.
Well,
conversation about,
Yeah, and
Right.
I thought we talked about, for the public hearings, specifying the ones on the list that were in place before the beginning of this year.
Mhm.
So to actually get those going, which, you know.
Well, that was why I sorted them by date.
Yeah, right, and that's fine.
That's most of these, it looks like.
Right.
those are all going down into the apartment buildings, right? The ones on Westford Street into Worthing Street? Isn't that they're going into the apartments down the bottom of the hill?
No, that's Westford Street, no. That would be North Road and Worthing Street.
Right,
Westford Street and Worthing Street is the other end of Worthing Street.
right. By
Unless
the
it's out of
common.
the back, I don't know.
Be by the common.
Could be out of the back. Oh,
Yeah.
that wouldn't be Worthing Street.
All right, so you'll talk to
Okay,
them
I will,
and
not-
make sure that.
I will pass along that the board's concerned this is not a complete list. The board wishes to discuss how to address polls that are missing off this list, and we'll have the list sorted by next to go, and we'll ask for a plan on these hearings that are less than 6 months old.
So we are going to have a public hearing.
that's the direction of the board,
Yes,
yeah.
we should have a public
That's what I'm
hearing.
hearing, yes. Okay,
We can
Okay.
try out the new comment policy
okay, all right, okay. All right.
Yeah, put the comment policy adoption before.
before, so we can adopt it, and then we'll try it out, take it for a test run. All right, so we're going to continue this to next meeting. Okay, moving on, next, appointments. Select Board appointments. So Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee, Madeline Atkins. Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, Cheryl Lyle, for a 3-year term. And Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, Jen Melanson, for a 3-year term. My understanding, there's all openings for these positions, correct?
Yes, and those are the applications that have been received in the office through the online system.
Okay. Any,
Are we doing these one at a time, or?
we could do it that way, or do the Clean Energy first and Diversity, Equity second? Why don't we do Clean Energy first? So have a nomination for Madeline Atkins?
Well, we have, yeah, oh, that's the EIC. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the,
Appoint, because you,
to appoint.
Yeah.
To appoint Madeline Atkins to the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee for a term ending 6/30, it doesn't,
2026.
2026. All right, 2026.
I'll second.
Second? All those in favor? Aye. Okay, another motion for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. We can take those together.
Okay, I make a motion that we appoint Cheryl Lyle and Jen Melanson to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, and hope that Sherry learns how to spell Chelmsford.
Second?
What was that last part?
I'd like to
I didn't
discuss
hear you.
this one.
I think that was a joke.
Yeah, it was kind of a joke. She spelled Chelmsford wrong
Oh,
3 times.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't hear it, that's why.
Second?
I'd like to discuss this one.
Okay.
You can have it, you need a second for discussion. Then you
Yeah.
can have,
I'll second with discussion.
yeah.
Okay.
So, when we first put the DEIC together, I think the board envisioned that this would be a committee of residents. And I'm questioning whether putting a department head who's not a resident on the committee is what the board had intended, or if it's more of a situation where, like other department heads and other staff in town, Jen would support this committee. And I'm also, quite frankly, I don't feel comfortable approving anybody to a committee that doesn't fill out the application. And I think if that's what the board wants to do, then the person should fill out the application. So that, I just am confused about, I think Jen has a lot to offer, but is her role as a staff support to the committee, or is her role as a member and a voting member of the committee? And I just wanted to get some
So
clarification.
Jen
on it.
Melanson is the one that you're referencing.
Yeah.
She's the only one who doesn't live in town. So, yeah, I
And
didn't
there's
realize
not a
that.
requirement for people to live in town to be on a committee, but when the board initially put the DEIC in place, I think we envisioned that we would bring in residents of the town who were affected by or cared about this topic. And I think Jen is a great champion. I just am trying to understand whether we want her in a role as a member of the committee or in a staff role supporting a committee, like we have other staff members supporting boards and committees. Because we have had people in the past apply for this board. I remember one applicant withdrew because we had too many applicants. So, and it's only been 2 weeks since the vacancy started. So that's my question is, do we want residents on this committee and Jen in a staff support capacity? Because they don't really have that staff support right now. And why wasn't the application filled out? That's like another question I have. That really didn't sit well with me. But
Well, I've had a few phone calls about it, and they expressed the same thing that Virginia has just mentioned, and I think maybe we're setting a poor precedent, and I think we spoke about it earlier, and I think Jen would be good, and whether or not she's got to be on the committee or she's just going to work with the committee, I think I'd like to see all committee members be, because what do you stop? with people that don't live in town. I mean, put somebody in the finance committee from out of town, or, you know what I mean?
But we don't have a policy on that now, right? Because I asked the same question, George.
Yep. Mr. Chairman, when Select Board Member Dixon raised this concern to me this morning, I did take an opportunity afterwards to look at the board's meeting minutes to find out the genesis of this and what did the board say. And what I found was back on August 17th, 2020, when the board was in the minutes considering the Diversity, Racial Equity, and Inclusion Committee composition. I'll read the paragraph. It's real brief. It says, Selectman Antool was aware of several people who were very interested in being part of this committee. Selectman Timmons created a list based on the previous meeting's discussion. The board agreed categories to potentially fill pending the applicant pool would be one town employee, a first responder, someone affiliated with the public schools, a young adult, a business person, and 3 to 5 at-large members. There may be other ad hoc subcommittees. Potential applicants can be asked which slots the applicant feels they are qualified to fill. The board will not actively participate in the committee's work. Applications be accepted through the end of August, with committee members to be appointed in September. Then I looked at the September meeting, and at the September 14th meeting, the minutes read that under Select Board Appointment of Diversity, Racial Equity, and Inclusion Committee, there were 13 applicants for this committee. The board agreed to accept all the applicants to the committee. Motion by Select Board Member Timmons to appoint all 13 applicants to the Diversity, Racial Equity, and Inclusion Committee as presented. Seconded by Board Member Dixon. Roll call. Aye for all the members.
Thank you for digging
that
that
was
up,
the only
because
thing
I
I saw.
couldn't remember.
Yeah, but that was because
Yeah.
we didn't want to leave anybody out.
But that was also when it was not a permanent committee.
Right.
You know,
Oh, you're right, Pat.
Yeah.
Do we have we don't have a residency requirement for any of the boards and committees.
That's more
if some
like-
by law.
But these are town-created committees. They're not statutory committees by state law.
And we don't have any.
Well, we don't have
any.
policy.
This was a select board
policy.
This was a
created
sport,
committee.
yeah.
That's why it's a select board appointment.
Well, I'm just curious, across
Yeah.
the board, as a town, do we have a residency
We
requirement for
created
any?
it as a permanent committee later?
Yes, a year later, we decided to make it permanent, and that's when we took the people that were there. It had to drop down to about 9, I think, so it was nice.
Let's
and
put the staggered
convenient.
3-year terms in
Correct,
place.
yeah.
That's all I have.
But to Erin's point, which I don't think has still been answered, is we don't have a requirement, whether it's a statutory committee or whether it's not,
Or permanent?
whether or not are permanent or temporary, whether or not they have to be town residents.
Well, some by statute have to be. In other words, a select board
Get
member
that.
has to be a town resident.
I get that.
A
Okay,
planning board.
let's go to
But
the select
on these
board. Yeah.
on these ad hoc town committees, no, there's no residency requirement, and no policy that requires that.
So is that the only concern, or is it the services
My-
aspect as
my-
well, which
my
I kind of
question-
understand?
So my question is, I have no problem with Jen being involved with this committee. I think it's a good fit. But my question is, do we want to ask her to do that in her capacity as a department head and someone who works in this every day and has some level of expertise to provide and keep the open position open for a resident? That's the only question I'm raising. I'm not objecting to Jen being involved. I'm just saying, what does the board want this?
Well, she's kind of
committee and
already
the voting
involved, and maybe
members
somebody
to
else would
be.
like to get involved also, yeah.
I mean, I guess maybe I would leave it open for another couple of weeks, but if we don't get any applicants, I don't see an issue with Jen being on the committee, a voting member on the committee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we do that?
Fair enough.
Can we vote to just
Yeah, you
push
can
it for a
table
couple of
it.
weeks?
Yeah, you can table
Revisit
it.
it in
Sure.
2 weeks?
So if we wanted to leave it posted,
Sure.
What do you want to do with Sherry? You're gonna,
I think we should.
Yeah, I would amend my motion then to appoint Sherry Lyle to the DEIC.
I'll second that.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And so the other open, we're going to leave one position open for 2 more weeks, and we'll take it up at that time.
and would you like me to have her fill out the full application
No, I
form?
just,
Okay, all right, no, okay.
I think
ask
if
her
somebody
to.
wants to
Okay.
be on a committee, they should
Okay.
fill out the application.
I think that should be across the board.
Okay.
So that we don't look at any applications that aren't filled out.
Like, I'm not going to play favorites if
Okay,
somebody hasn't
all right,
filled out an application.
we'll do that. If they aren't, we'll note that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it would be better if they were all filled out. I don't want to just point out one thing because it can come in from different folks as well, so. All right, town manager appointments?
No. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was thinking the board's confirmation of the appointment of Laurel Lynn Maury to the Vinyl Square Strategic Action Plan Committee. This committee appointment was discussed at the last Vinyl Square Committee. It has the endorsement of the committee. This replaces Janet Murphy, who just wasn't able to continue at this point in time, and they've coordinated to, Laurel Lynn will join the committee and be the recording secretary. So it's, I guess I just want to give you the background on this, that it's very much supported by the committee, and as you know, they're really, making a lot of good progress.
Get a motion to confirm?
Okay, I'll make a motion to confirm the town manager's appointment of Laura Lynn Maury to the Vinyl Square Strategic Action Plan Committee for an unexpired term to expire on 6/30/2024.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, meeting minutes. Select Board regular meeting minutes of our 6/26/23. Are there any comments on what was presented? I see one half smile, so I'm feeling I'm getting something.
I didn't catch this when I reviewed the minutes, but on page 3 about the poll petition, it says it was agreed to approve this petition without prejudice to the double poll issue. Isn't that like a legal term?
Yeah,
What the heck does that mean?
I guess it means that we're not going to hold the double polls
Right.
hostage.
That's how I saw it.
Yeah, I was, we didn't.
Because we talked about not doing that.
We did not use
Oh,
that term.
specifically.
We did not.
About not
No,
allowing
she
single
used
polls.
much better language than we did.
I withdraw my comment.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the regular meeting minutes of June 26, 2023 as presented.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. 5-0. Okay, next is announcement of determination of releasability of executive session minutes. Minutes for release, June 26, 2023, segment 4. Minutes not for release, June 5th, 2023, segment 1. Okay, liaison reports. George?
No, all set.
Virginia?
Yeah, I just have a couple from the assessors. We've all received our first quarter tax bills, and they just want to clarify that it's called a preliminary real estate tax bill because the actual tax rate for fiscal '24 won't be set until November. And if you have any questions concerning your bill or the history on which it's based, you should call the assessor's office at 978-250-5220. And then just an update from the Conservation Commission. They're getting close on the conservation restriction, working with the Land Trust, and we'll be bringing that to the Select Board for review when it's completed. And for folks waiting for the granite sign at Warren Pole, they're getting closer to have that installed. They have a new supplier that they're working with. And also people who have been concerned about the field trails not being mowed, that's also been resolved, and they should be getting caught up on that shortly. And then at Crooked Spring Reservation, the knotweed infestation has been cleared from the boardwalk on Graniteville Road, and it should be much more walkable right now for the public. And they're looking into a longer-term approach.
George, I think you have.
I did want to commend the parade committee. I thought it was a great parade, and it's nice to have it back to like close to what it used to be. I mean, it was a big crowd. It's a lot of nice. It was a fun thing. So I just want to congratulate them and thank them for all their work. And thank you.
Erin?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I was going to just reiterate what George said. So many people have said it was the best parade ever, and unsolicited comments, best parade ever, so had to be good. And just a couple ribbon cutting things. We last week did a ribbon cutting at Petite Nails and Spot, 48 Chelmsford Street. So that's a new business over there next to Subway. And this week, today, we had a sort of ribbon cutting for the first cash mob in Chelmsford. And this is an initiative to encourage people to help out the businesses, particularly the ones on Summer Street that were closed for over a week due to a fire last month. And There's so many businesses in there, and they really suffered by being closed for so long. So encourage everybody to go out and do some shopping along Summer Street and Central Square. Last week, there was another power outage that affected them for pretty much a whole day, and I think there might have even been a short one today, I'm not sure. But anyway, so go spend some money on Summer Street. That's all I have.
Well, I actually wanted to also thank the parade committee in just with the weather situation the way it was. And I came through town on the 3rd, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. There wasn't much going on. And by the time it was 4 o'clock, it was set up and rolling. I couldn't believe the transformation that occurred. And just to see that in the parade with the Canadian contingent back in with the bands and so forth, and the John Carson Road Race in full swing, in the CCA art, it was exceptional, and I thought they did a great job. And I saw that there was somebody that was helping out putting the kids on the little train too, and I think that was a good job too. Thank you. Okay, I'll take a motion to move into executive session.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we adjourn to executive session, not to return to open session for the purpose of strategy with respect to litigation regarding the North Chelmsford Water District PFAS claim, and to review executive session meeting minutes from June 26, 2023, segments 1, 2, and 3.
I'll second.
George?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
Erin?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
And I'm aye.